violence. And you have people like Nancy Pelosi coming out and saying stuff about George Floyd, that he sacrificed his life for social justice, with completely ignoring the fact that no, like, he was murdered. He didn't have a choice.
Let me put you on game.
I wanted to talk to you about the trial. I didn't want to talk to you about the trial. Let me be honest, because it's exhausting to exist in that space, because it's a space that we as Black men and Black people as a whole exist in constantly. But I feel like it's necessary to talk about because it's something that we've been living with as a society for the last year or so. So I wanted to get your feelings and your opinion on the verdict. Like, how did the verdict itself make you feel?
The verdict itself made me feel, I love what Andrew Schultz said about it. He was like, it's supposed to, if this is what it's supposed to look like. This is what justice is supposed to feel like. It's supposed to almost feel like a matter of fact. You know, the conversation from everyone universally was that Derek Chauvin was completely in the wrong and he needs to go to jail for murder. It was kind of a matter of fact. And I love how the media kind of hyped up the trial and made you feel like there was suspense. What's the verdict gonna be? Is it gonna, the defense, they're using these age-old racist defensive tactics to say that Chauvin was, had to do what he had to do. And they're gonna be riots in the street. If it's not this, it's not that, everybody needs to be on alert. And they kind of made the story very questionable, to the point where you're like, okay, do we really think that he's going to get off scot-free again? Is this really the narrative? As opposed to us being very confident that no, he's actually going to get put away. Justice is going to be served. And they tried to, and I feel like it was manipulative the way everything was kind of set up to put us in a mode of suspense, put us in a mode of feeling anxious, and put us to a place where we have to check in constantly to see what's going on with the trial. Just more drama. And in the end, he was convicted on all 3 counts. And it's like, yeah, this is what's supposed to happen when something as horrific as what happened occurred for the world to see. So a lot of it is relief. It's relief, and just the feeling like, oh yeah, this is what standard justice is supposed to feel like. How about you?
There was a mild sense of relief, I guess you could say, but for me, like you said, it was more just a guy that murdered someone on camera got convicted of murder. That's how I felt about it. It should have happened, but if it didn't happen, if there was, for whatever reason, there was a not guilty verdict, I think that I would have found myself disappointed, but not surprised, because we do see often that that's how things go. And it's unfortunate, but it does sometimes seem like it takes complete and unequivocal, no shadow of a doubt evidence that we can all see for something like this to happen. Where if it wasn't recorded and all we had was witness testimony by word of mouth, that maybe, or to be honest, most likely the verdict wouldn't have been the way that we expected. So it was a bit of a relief, but it was kind of also just like you said, that's what should have happened. So with the trial and the verdict, there's been a larger conversation happening about what this means for the future. So what, if anything, do you think this means for social justice going forward?
I feel like for social justice going forward, there's a sense of relief, but I think there's a bunch of work to be done, because people want to feel like law enforcement is going to be held accountable. I think there is a sad, maybe, reality that violence is something that happens in our world. And you have a country in the US that has all these guns. You have police officers that are trained to neutralize threats, instead of de-escalate and to, improve and build trust with the community. I don't know how much of a priority that really is, as opposed to, the training to neutralize a threat. And people want to feel like they that justice will be served. We give the government a monopoly on, violence for that reason. And so when there isn't social justice, there's such a, feeling of distrust that, builds up within the community. And I just feel like that is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with the consequences of all those years of trust just being abused. And so if accountability isn't something that continues to happen, there's not going to be much in terms of social justice, and the feeling of it happening at a rate that's acceptable.
Right. No, I definitely understand that. I can say that one of the only positive things that came from all of this is social justice has become more acceptable. I think that we're seeing something that we've never seen before with large corporations and entities that would have been quiet on the issues in years past. They've been almost forced to speak on social issues. And speaking out about these issues is no longer taboo. Like, for example, like if Colin Kaepernick were to kneel now, as opposed to when he did a few years ago, it wouldn't have gotten the response, or it wouldn't get the response that it had gotten back then.
Right.
So I hope that this forces greater accountability from all parties involved in committing injustices against people of color. But I guess that's mostly wishful thinking. And at the same time, I think those strides in terms of acceptability of social justice have come at the cost of pandering.
Mm.
I think we see it from some of those same corporations. It they know that a large uh, percentage of their demographic that they're selling to are fans of social justice and agree with it. So there's almost this notion that in order to appear okay to those people, that they have to make these statements. And you have people like Nancy Pelosi coming out and saying stuff about George Floyd, that he sacrificed his life for social justice, with completely ignoring the fact that no, like, he was murdered. He didn't have
Yeah.
a choice. He's not Martin Luther King. He's not Malcolm X, who is a revolutionary that is aware of the risks that they're taking in preaching to injustice. Like,
Right.
he's just a regular guy that was just going to return something at a convenience store. He didn't ask to become a martyr, you know?
Right.
So you have, people like the Raiders and stuff like that saying just these completely tone deaf things in order to try to appeal to their fan base. And it's people that never would have cared previously coming out and pretending to care out of fear of being called cowardly, or worse, like that they are on the other side of the fence. So and especially you see that in
Yeah.
people that feel guilty about being adjacent to Black culture, and then
Mm.
they don't have to deal with the hardships that come with being a person of color. So they feel like the next best thing that they can do is just come out and do Blackout Tuesday or whatever else to make them feel better about how close they are to Black culture, without necessarily dealing with what comes with that.
Right.
So there's so many things that obviously this could have taken up the whole podcast, but
Yeah.
I wanted to get your feelings about the state that we are in today. How do you feel about the state of police and civilian interactions and the state of gun violence today? And if there is any possible solution to what we're going through as a country?
Um, so I think about it from multiple levels. Um, you know, as of right now, statistically speaking, I love the Washington Post article that kind of gives the breakdown of per of the way things are, police brutality in general, what the numbers show. Because statistically speaking, there are more white people that get killed every year by cops, but the percentage of white people and the ratio, there is a disproportionate amount of black people killed versus white people when you look at the percentages. So, black people make up 13% of the population, but they get killed at twice the rate as white Americans.
Right.
And so somebody might look at the numbers and say, oh, but cops are killing white people more than blacks. It's like, no, you have to look at the per capita number to really be able to really delve and understand the context of why we feel so afraid and why there is so much mistrust in law enforcement. And I think that when it comes to just gun violence, we live in a country with guns, and a lot of people and the cops are kind of trained in this style of threat neutralization, shoot at the center mass. If you see a threat, make sure that you protect and serve that, and disarm and neutralize that threat. And I think because there is community policing and it's enforcement as opposed to service, there's a mentality that if we're called to put down threats. And if you're in an African American community and you have, to be frank, someone who's not from that community, which often, cops happen to be white more often than not, you have a more of a sense of this is enforcers. These are people that are here to, kind of rule us and rule over us, oversee us in a way. And it creates a dynamic of I am going to be on edge. They're going to be on edge. There is no trust. And they come in guns pointing because they don't know who's who. They don't understand, maybe cultural context as to how, people might be interacting. They don't understand how in one situation, maybe this threat can be neutralized via de-escalation versus, we have to draw guns immediately. You know what I mean? And so because of that lack of cultural awareness, to me, it really gets to the underbelly of what's causing these challenges and misunderstandings that end up in someone, being fatally wounded or, excessively brutalized in whatever way. And so, I understand that cops have a dangerous job and they're asked to do a lot, to be a psychologist and to understand the difference between someone who has mental illness and is wilding out in the streets and someone who might be in a domestic dispute versus someone is a legit threat to hurting somebody, and trying to dice out all those situations and just being called onto the scene without any context is tough. But it's even tougher when you don't understand the needs of that community. And so, I feel like a lot of empathy is missing. And if we are going to really move forward, there has to be a bridge of trust. And there has to be a sense of, okay, these individuals are here to serve the community. They're not here to just oversee the community. My wife used to live in Coney Island, and I would go there all the time. And there was always a cop on the corner because it was a rough neighborhood. And there is a sense of fear that some residents might have of other residents of the neighborhood. And so the cops are there to just kind of be a deterrent. But at the same time, you're also, how much of an interaction do they have with the residents? Are they just kind of sitting in their cop car, waiting on the corner, waiting for somebody to do something? Or how often are they like interacting and say, oh, hey, what's up, kid? Trying to actually talk to people, trying to get to know people. And I think it's a two-way street, but it's definitely upon the branding of police officers to really recognize that, hey, we're here to serve the community and we need to look more of like an ally instead of an intruder, because there's no way to build trust and there's always going to be tension in the air when you have that mindset.
Of course. Yeah, it's a tough spot that we're in as a country. Like you said, the numbers are appalling in a way, because despite the increased media scrutiny and despite the increased use of body cameras, the statistics in terms of per capita deaths haven't changed since 2015. There's been
Since they started
zero.
tracking it.
Yeah, of course.
And it's only been
So
started tracking since 2015 officially.
right. Yeah, I think we're referring to the same Washington Post article. So it's like the rates, I think for Native Americans are 3 times to 1. For Black people, I think it's 2.6 to 1. And when we're talking about unarmed Black people, the rate is 3 to 1.
Mm.
So there's definitely a problem that we have to address as a country. And outside of the police violence, is like you said, there's a violence problem in general. There's been 147 mass shootings in 2021. So I don't even, have there even been 147 days in 2021? We're
Um,
probably around that mark right now, right? Somewhere
no.
close to it.
Yeah, somewhere close to it. Yeah,
Yeah. So the
just
fact
about.
that
Yeah.
there's an average of a mass shooting per day, that's definitely a problem. I think that we have to have some level of large scale reform. We can't have a mass shooting, like at least the one that we hear about weekly, being the norm. We can't have a 16-year-old girl being killed by a police officer at the same time that another one is being convicted of murder. Like these things can't happen at the rate that they happen. And I think that there are people that see injustice as that and they support eradicating it, who are on one side. And I think there are people that are on the complete other side that are devoted to order and devoted to keeping things as they are. And I think you can't change the minds of those people. As much as you
Mm.
may try, I think that they're probably set in their ways and they will consistently side with order and hierarchy over equality and empathy every time. There's no, I don't know how much hope there is for that, but I think that there are those people in the middle.
Mm.
I think that there's a large segment of the American people that are in the middle. And Martin Luther King has a great quote, and he says that there are people that are more devoted to order than to justice, who prefer a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice, who constantly say, I agree with you in the goal that you seek, but I can't agree with your methods of direct action. So those are the same people that will look at protests and look at a Colin Kaepernick, or will look at the NBA and say that they agree with the message, but they don't agree with the way that it's being brought forth. And for that reason are unwilling, or the reason that they say are unwilling to join the fight. They're unwilling to address these injustices in their own personal lives and speak out against it
Mm.
because of a sense of their own bias or a sense of apathy or whatever you want to call it. And I think
Yeah.
those are the minds of the people that we have to change. Like we have to change the minds of the people that say that they're not racist, that say that they're not prejudiced, and that say that they want change but aren't willing to do anything about it, or criticize the people that are willing to do something about it in the way that they decide to go about making that change. So I think that as a country, we have to continue to have these conversations like we're having, and we have to continue to look at people that are riding the fence and say that they have to pick a side. They have to hopefully choose justice and choose empathizing with people that are different from them in order to actually really truly make change.
Mm. Yeah. And that empathy is certainly a two-way street, and we have to, because we understand what the default culture is in a lot of ways. Um, you have to also be willing to understand the countercultural examples as well as what goes against your grain. And empathy is so important because it just allows people to be able to understand another's story, another's perspective, and you can wrap your mind better around what a particular struggle is, and that way solutions can be, organic solutions can be found, as opposed to just inorganic policy making that tries to address an issue but really kind of sideswipes the issue and doesn't hit the nail on the head.
Mhm.
And we need both sides to move together and forward as a country, because we are essentially a huge family and a huge community. And there's no reason why a community that's as powerful as we are should be fighting so much internally, over something as that should be as straightforward as justice. People want to feel safe. People want to feel like the law is there to protect them as well, and they don't want to feel and be in a state of fear, as well as uncertainty when it comes to police interactions, when it comes to interactions with their neighbors. And so we got to work together. We got to be better. We got to continue to have conversations. We got to continue to be open-minded, and we also got to give people room to grow, room to understand that mistakes are made, but what kind of corrective actions can be done to rectify those mistakes in a meaningful way, and not in a way that's pandering, not in a way that is just trying to sell a t-shirt, but in a way that actually makes kids and the individuals of our country feel safer and more unified. um
Right.
yeah, let's continue to push those kind of conversations. Let's continue to grow with each other, as opposed to trying to tear each other down, because at the end of the day, if you if we burn each other's, if you burn my house down and I burn your house down, now nobody has a place to live.